You're listening to SM Media, the #1 place for exclusive content.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of All Time 11 right here on SM Media. I'm Scott McPike, delighted to be your host as always. A very special guest in this episode. I'm joined by the former Inverness Defender, two-time First Division winner David Proctor. David, it's a pleasure to be on the show, mate. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Scott. No, delighted to be on the show. Thanks.
No worries. How's everything been? How have you been doing?
Aye, it's been okay. It's been tough. I've been working all the way through, so I'm working up at the hospital at Marius for the last 10 months. So obviously it's been pretty hectic and just different times. So I didn't get furloughed. I was on the front line working away. So yeah, that's it. Just getting on with it really.
Brilliant. Have you been missing football as well?
Aye, that's been massive because you're working away during the week. You've not really got much to look forward to at the weekend. So you just do what you can at the weekends. Try and watch as many streams online as you can. But it's just not the same.
No, definitely not. We'll touch on a bit in your early career. Obviously, you broke through at Hibs. What was your kind of memories firstly coming through there, and who were your kind of good mentors?
So yeah, I started at Hibs when I was at school, so maybe around about 11 years old. So I was at Motherwell at first, and John Park was the kind of head of youth. Yeah. Billy Hendry was helping him, and they ended up, when Alex McLeish went from Motherwell to Hibs, they ended up taking like the whole kind of youth kind of coaches. So John Park and Billy Hendry took me through to Hibs, and just trained there from 11 right through to when I left school at 17, and then went full time. And Don Park was my coach, mostly Malky Thompson, before kind of trying to push my way through to the reserves at under 21s it was at that point. So yeah, just a good kind of setup that they had, and a lot of good memories, good players that came through that era, and obviously to be part of that was something that I kind of look back fondly on.
Brilliant. Obviously after that you move on to Inverness. You have two spells at Inverness. We'll touch on obviously your two league championships you won in the First Division. What were your kind of highlights of when you went to Inverness?
So the first one, I felt like I kind of landed on my feet. I'd get released from Hibs. I remember it was Bobby Williamson was the manager. I'd played the day before in a reserve game against Hearts at Easter Road, dislocated my shoulder, and I come off and I was sitting in a sling. And the next day, Bobby Williamson pulls me in and says, "Look, you're getting released." So it all kind of happened in 24 hours. It's some 24 hours for me, playing in that reserves, getting injured and then getting released. But a couple of days later, Donald Park phoned me, and he was assistant manager to wee Robbo, the first spell, John Robertson, and he just says, "Look, we're interested if you want to come up to Inverness." They were in the First Division, old First Division at that time, and I says, "Oh, well, yeah, straight away." And I says, "What an opportunity!" They were there or thereabouts the season before in the Championship, so I thought, yeah, it's a good move to go and get games. Still only 19, and then to go in and play. I think it was about 17 times in that season that we won promotion. Was really. Just pleasing at that age to be able to go and do that. And I didn't realise at that age that these types of opportunities and moments don't come around. Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, before we move on to your team, I just want to touch on, we'll touch on your second spell at Inverness later on, but you went to Dundee United, but there was a bit of there was an issue towards the end of it. How did you find your time at Dundee United, and just talk us through what the issue was at the end?
I'd signed a 3-year deal at Dundee United in 2006, and Craig Brewster was the manager, and he'd been, trying to sign a few boys from Inverness, the ones that had kind of brought a wee bit of success to the club when he was the manager there, and he wanted to bring a few, like Ian Black, Gam Dodge, Matt Brown, and he ended up with me. So I don't think the Dundee United fans were too best pleased with that. So yeah, obviously Craig didn't last too much longer after that, having been on quite a poor run prior to that, and Craig Levine came in and just made it clear that I wasn't going to be part of his plans. So Yeah, sitting there with 2.5 years in my deal, knowing a manager that didn't really quite fancy me. So I tried to knuckle down, and I went on loan to Airdrie.
Yeah.
Came back in the summer, and really just knuckled down. And that pre-season, I was one of the fittest in the Dundee United squad, but I was never ever going to be one of Craig Levein signing. So it was fine. He brought in his own players, like Sean Dillon actually brought in, and it was clear that he was going to be playing right back. Lee Mayer, they still had Lee Wilkie was there, so they had some good defenders. So yeah, it was fair enough. And at that point, Inverness came back in for me, and I thought I'd rather just go and get back playing again. And Craig Brewster took me back up to Inverness, so I jumped at the chance.
Brilliant. We'll make a wee start on your team. Are you, first and foremost, is it going to be players you've played with or played against in your career?
So I've gone for players I've played with.
Brilliant. And you got a formation and how you want to set up?
So I've gone for a 3-4-1-2, which quite an open, expansive formation, not one that I've probably played in. The type of formation, the teams that I was playing in were 4-5-1 at backs against the wall type thing. So I've gone a wee bit more expansive just to make sure I can fit in my more attacking players.
Excellent. And just as well, before we start, are you putting yourself in the team or are you?
No. I've maybe, I think I'm on the injury table. I think I'm in the physio room.
Brilliant. We'll make a start. We'll start first of all with the position. Who's the goalkeeper in your team? Who will you start off with in net?
So goalkeeper, I played with a couple of good goalies. A couple of them at Inverness. One in Mark Brown. When I first went up there, he was, attitude was spot on. He would always come in a wee bit early to train and doing his fast feet and agility. Dundee United, I played with a really good goalkeeper, Gregor Shamatilski.
Yeah.
He was vying for the number one spot for the Polish national team with Artur Boric. Mm-hmm. So he had a good pedigree. He ended up signing for Hibs from Dundee United, or he went to Hibs at some point, and I was back at Inverness, and I ended up scoring against Big Shamo. So he kind of got in my best 11 because I didn't score against many. I didn't score many goals. So for him to let a goal in against me, he's not making my team. So I went for Ryan Essen, who, he was behind me for the majority of my appearances in my second spell at Inverness. Just a solid, 7 out of 10 every week. You knew what you were getting. Quite underrated. Nothing flashy, but he was just an all-rounder. Safe pair of hands. Wouldn't spill many shots. Very vocal. And I found that in training, that it kind of made me a better defender. He was that vocal in training. Every goal that he lost in training, he would be kicking the goalpost, wanting to fight his defenders and saying why you're not closing them down. So, no, certainly from my point of view, I always knew to show players, down the line and not let them cut inside to have a shot, because if that happened, Essen would be right on top of you. So yeah, he went on. He was part of the championship winning team in 2010, and then he went on to play a part when Inverness won the Scottish Cup in 2015 as well. So I went for Ryan.
Brilliant, great choice. We'll move on to your defence. We'll start off with your left-sided centre back. Who's in there?
So I played with actually quite a few good lefties in my time in defence, both left centre back or left back. So could have gone for like the Grant Monroe, captain at Inverness, Richard Hastings, Canadian international, Stuart Golobic was a solid left back as well. Even Graham Shinney, he played left back at the start of his career before moving into a central midfield. But the player I've gone for is Christian Calvinist.
Right.
So played with Christian at Dundee United, Norwegian. He signed from Branbergen just before I signed, and I think on his debut he scored at Ibrox. I think they'd maybe drawn 2 each, and he scored in his debut. So he'd set the bar high for himself. But yeah, just again solid left back, used to get up and down the line, steady player, great delivery with his left foot. I remember he was really calm, really calm demeanour about him. He never get flustered on the pitch. So, it was all part of his game that, he wouldn't be erratic. He wouldn't be an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 one week, or a 4 or 5 out of 10. He would just be steady, and you knew what you were getting. When he left Dundee United, he signed for Burnley, and he played a part in their championship winning team at Wembley in the playoffs, and then he ended up playing quite a few games in the English Premier League for Burnley as well. So good pedigree.
Yeah, definitely great choice. Who's the centre in the three? Who's the centre on the back three in the defence?
Right, so middle of my three, and probably captain. I've got quite a few captains in my team actually, but I'm going for Darren Dodge. So Dodgy, I played with Inverness mostly, but I briefly at Dundee United as well. But Darren, off the park as well as on the park, was a leader. You know, the boys kind of looked up to him. He was a big influence in my career. He came up to Inverness when I was just 20 years old, and I wasn't always a defender. I used to play further up the park.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just, you know, defensive qualities. He kind of taught me, you know, away from the park. We stayed up in digs up in Inverness, and he would, you know, teach me about diet, you know, keeping well hydrated, you know, getting good sleeps in the lead up to games. On the park, you know, he just win his headers, win his tackles, keep everything simple, and give it on to the players in the middle of the park that could go and make things happen. I've seen a few Cruyffs from him, right enough. He used to do this point in Cruyff, which fooled some strikers, but most of them kind of got wise to it. So I think he just learned to keep things basic, and he went on to, you know, play till he was about 38, I think, and played Falkirk and captain these teams as well. So yeah, I've gone for Big Dodgy.
Brilliant. Closing out the back three, who's in the right side of centre back?
So right in my three, I've gone for a player who probably not so well known in these shores, but a player that I played with FC Edmonton over in Canada.
Right, okay.
A big Northern Irishman called Albert Watson.
Right, okay.
So Albert was a bit of a beast on the park, but gentleman off it. He'd just come off winning the Northern Irish Premiership with Linfield when he signed for FC Edmonton.
Right.
And he came over with his wife Alison, and wanting to start a kind of a new life. So we struck up a partnership, and at that time I was right centre back, he was left centre back, and we kind of just hit it off the park again. We got on really, really well, and it helped our partnership on it. We didn't lose a lot of goals that full season in the North American Soccer League. So yeah, we played against some good players, South American style players, some Brazilians, Venezuelans, and the two of us, between the Scots and the Northern Irish, kind of had them under control. So I remember one game we played against Carolina Railhawks, and the big striker, 6'4", had started on my side. I think he'd thought, you know, the managers told him to play on me to win his flick-ons. And after about half an hour, I was winning most of my headers, and he's gone over to Albert's side to try his luck. So the keeper starts kicking his by kicks up to Big Albert, and Albert smashes him. And after 5 minutes, he was back over my side. So that just kind of sums up Albert. You know, he would just take no prisoners. We had each other's back.
Brilliant. Great defence so far. Well, before we move on to midfield, I just want to touch on your second spell at Inverness. Obviously, it was longer than it was kind of your main time of your career. Would you say that was the highlight of your career, that spell at Inverness? Yeah,
definitely. You know, I had that 5-year run at it, you know, the second spell. You know, I'd come up from Dundee United after a kind of disappointing spell. You know, I'd lost a wee bit of form, lost my confidence, and then come back up to a place that I knew really well. You know, I enjoyed the city, being in the city, I enjoyed like the people. You know, they were all very friendly around about the stadium and in the town. So it was just one of these places that players seem to say that you know, some players are suited to certain places, and it seemed to be the case for me. And then not long after I'd signed in my second spell, you know, I got a really good run at it. You know, scored against Celtic, and you know, just got back to enjoying my football with a smile on my face, really, and then had a good 5-year run at it.
Brilliant. We'll move on to your midfield. We'll start off with your left-sided midfielder. Who we got in there?
So left side, I've gone for another Northern Irishman from FC Edmonton. So Darryl Fordyce. So Darryl came over with Albert, having played for Linfield, and so in Northern Ireland, you know, both well-known players and you know, held in high regard. So they'd come over again to kind of start a new life with his wife Tina. And Darryl was a very intelligent player. He started his career off with Portsmouth when he left Northern Ireland to go over from Belfast, and he started career at Portsmouth, playing with like Canu, Teddy Sheringham for a wee spell, Pedro Mendes, Benjani, and Harry Redknapp was the manager. So yeah, he was just very intelligent player. He could play as a number 10 in behind the strikers, score goals with his left, right foot. Wasn't blessed with that much pace. He's still playing. I'm speaking as if he's retired. He's not blessed with it. He's playing with Valor FC, they're called, in the Canadian Premier League now. He went back out that way, having played with Derry City for a wee spell a year or so back. So he's captaining the team out there in Valor in Canada. So yeah, just very, very technical, good player. Studies the game a lot. He's kind of coming up for the twilight of his career, studies it, and I think he's one that would probably go into coaching as well.
Brilliant. We'll move into the centre of midfield. We'll start off with your left-sided centre midfielder.
Right, so my two centre mids are, two battlers. Any of the football purists watching them will be kind of turning over thinking, what am I doing? But two battlers, both of them captains as well for their clubs. Barry Robson for Dundee United. So Barry kind of played mostly on the left, he played on the right, but he played a lot of games in the centre of the park as well, kind of for Celtic and Dundee United, and just dragged players through games at times, just with these battling qualities, but actually very technical. He's a very, very good left foot. Yeah. With free kicks, corners, were an asset, and put teams under pressure with that. He would always stay behind team training, working on his set pieces and crossing, and that obviously ultimately earned him his move to Celtic. But he went on to play Champions League football against some of the top teams in Europe. I remember this kind of sums up his aggression and battling qualities. I remember one practice game we had on a Friday at Tannadice before the game on Saturday, and Craig Levine would do this every Friday just to run through his team. So I was playing a right back for the reserve for the Scuddies, and Barry was playing left midfield, and the tactic was basically for the keeper to launch it to Baz to go and win his headers, and I was winning a few headers in this practice game, so I must have wound him up, and next thing I know, I went up for a header, he's smashed me with his elbow and gave me 8 stitches, down the side of my eye. So that kind of showed that he's, even in training, that he had that kind of aggressive streak, which kind of served him well. He was well known for at Celtic to putting in a few tackles in the Old Firm games.
Brilliant. Who partners him in the centre midfield? Who's on the right side of the centre midfield?
So again, this is to kind of squeeze him in. I'm going for Richie Foran.
Right.
So
okay.
Richie kind of played mostly in an attacking area for Inverness, in the left. But later on in his career, he moved back into the centre of the park, where he could influence the game just with his, from being vocal first and foremost. But he liked to put a tackle in. He could put his foot on the ball, keep things mostly simple in the middle of the park. But he really thrived when he was a wee bit more mobile out in the left and could win his headers, diags, and he put on a lot of assists for Adam Rooney during the championship winning season from the left. But in the middle of the park, just his battling quality. He's another captain. So I've got quite a few captains in the team.
Brilliant. Closing out the midfield, who we got on the right hand side of midfield?
So on the right was Johnny Hayes. There is Johnny Hayes. So Johnny kind of played right of a 3 mostly. During that championship winning season, we played that 4-2-3-1, and Johnny would play on the right, Richie Foran on the left, and I will not say who the striker was because that will give it away. So he's in my team as well. So Johnny would pop up the goals from the right hand side. He would cut inside. He would assist. He could go down the line and obviously dink the ball in with his right foot. Later on in his career, he would obviously go and play, on the left for Aberdeen and for Celtic. Where he could play left back. Very versatile. I remember when he first came up, he was still only 21 when he first signed for Inverness from Leicester. And it was Lee Cox was a player that we had from Leicester up in Inverness as well, and he basically pulled Terry Butcher aside and said, look, you need to sign this boy, Johnny Hayes. He's brilliant. He's a bit mad, but he, put him in your team, he'll win you games. So Johnny came up and he played, I think, a pre-season game against Forest Mechanics as a trialist, and I think Terry took him off at half time after 45 minutes, basically saying, right, I don't want you getting injured and I don't want anybody else spotting you. You're signing. And I think he signed him there and then. And obviously the rest is history. He went, on to play a lot of games for Inverness and then Aberdeen, and won his move to Celtic. And he ended up getting a call up for the Republic, I'm sure.
He did that. Brilliant midfield. We'll touch on a bit in your time in Canada as well with Edmonton. How did that move come about at first?
So I'd left Inverness in 2012, and it was probably, coming to an end anyway. Myself and Terry Butcher had he pulled me aside and says, look, you've not played enough with injuries and you've not had a good time with injuries, so I think it's best for both parties to part ways type thing. So it was sad because I'd spent 8 years in total there over the two spells, and felt that if I'd got myself fit, then I would still have a couple of years left in me. I was still only 28 or so. Yeah. But when I did leave, I just thought, I want to try something new, something different. And not many players were doing it. I knew Greg Shields had gone out to the North American Soccer League. Yeah. Maybe one or two other Scottish players at that time, but I think Greg Shields was one of the first, and he signed for Carolina Railhawks, and I ended up just basically put myself out there to say, look, I'm available. I didn't have an agent working for me. I was just doing it myself, and sure enough, FC Edmonton get back to me and said that we'll take you over, and if you pass your medical and whatnot, we'll sign you. So that's what ended up happening.
And how much did you enjoy it?
It was brilliant. It was really 2 years I was in Canada, and it was a fantastic experience, life experience. You'd in Edmonton, and particularly, you'd 6 months of winter and 6 months of summer. Basically, you'd no spring and autumn. It was either -40 or the sun was splitting the sky, in the summer. So it was an interesting experience, but I loved it. And my wife came out with me, Rona, and we just had a nice wee area on the south side of the city, and enjoyed exploring Canada. From there, we went to the Canadian Rocky Mountains. We went to Vancouver. We flew down to Las Vegas because it was only a few $100, couple $100. It was really cheap to fly down there. So it was just a great life experience. We used to play our games mostly in America because we were the only Canadian team at that time. Yeah. So we'd fly down every second week to go and play in Florida, Minnesota, Atlanta, all these places. So it was Carolina. It was just a great life experience, really.
Brilliant. And obviously you go back to Airdrie as well. What was your time like there? What was your second spell like Airdrie? Yeah, so
it's funny. I was in Canada at the time, and not really. I hadn't signed for anybody, and not really sure what I was going to do. And we'd gone down to Las Vegas for a week or 10 days for a wee holiday with a couple of the boys from FC Edmonton and the wives as well. So we all went down to Vegas, and it was a Scottish number that phoned me. So I think I was in the middle of a casino, and I've said to Rona, I need to go and take this. And sure enough, it was Gary Bowen had phoned me, and I was sitting in a hotel or casino in Las Vegas, and basically agreed to sign for Airdrie. So I'd said to Rona, look, don't panic or anything, but I know it's a big come down going from Las Vegas to Airdrie, but I think it's the best thing for me. I've still got a few years left. I mean, fair play to Rona. She agreed that I still had something to give football, so we came back and I signed part-time with Airdrie.
Brilliant. We'll finish off your team. We'll start with the first position. Who plays just behind the strikers?
So again, I kind of shoehorned this player in a wee bit. He's more of a striker, but he was very technical, and he would drop off into that hole. A couple of other candidates for this role, Andrew Shinney, Graham's brother, who went on to get capped for Scotland, and he's playing for Charlton just now in League One down south. But very technical player. He could have made it. Danny Sanchez was a wee Spaniard that I played with at Inverness. And helped us win the championship that season in 2010. But I've gone for Marius Nikolai, who the Romanian international who signed for Inverness. Craig Brewster signed him back in 2007, and he'd some pedigree. I think Sporting Lisbon had paid £3 million for him. He was playing in the national team with Adrian Mutu. He played with young Cristiano Ronaldo at Sporting Lisbon as well. So I think he was Cali Thistle's highest paid player of all time, I think, with nobody really knew, but I think the rumours were that he was up there anyway.
Yeah, he was some player as well. What was it about him? Did you see straight away just how good he was going to be for Inverness?
Yeah, in a club like Inverness as well, in a squad like Inverness, when the average wage isn't that high, for a player like that to come in, would have been easy for the boys to just to kind of make him an outsider type thing. But he basically was such a nice guy. He really just fitted in, and doesn't matter how much money you were on, the boys just respected him. And he was technically just so good. He didn't actually go off to a great start. I don't think he scored many goals at the beginning, but I think maybe by Christmas time he'd started banging them in. But it was his all-round game, and just being down to earth. Just he went on to play in Euro 2008 after our season. So yeah, just to have that calibre of player playing with us and fitting in to the style of play that Inverness would play, was testament to his character, really.
Brilliant. Moving up front, we'll start off with your left-sided striker. Who's in there?
Right, so I've gone for Adam Rooney. So Adam just signed as a young boy, having come up the ranks with Stoke City, and I think he may well still be Stoke City's youngest ever hat-trick scorer. But when he came up, he was still raw, and it was Craig Brewster that signed him, and Craig actually played himself ahead of Adam at the start of the season, being quite right. It was just that Adam was still finding his feet at this level type thing. Just an all-rounder. His game probably suited Terry Butcher's more direct style when Terry came in, and that's when he kind of came into his own. He would run the channels. He was strong, aggressive when his flick-ons. Back to goal, probably not his strongest point. He worked on it certainly, but put him in front of the goals. A bit like a Chris Boyd type thing, just a poacher. He could score right, left foot, headers. Really nice guy as well, just down to earth. Used to kind of hang about with each other as well, off the park, and we got on really well. So yeah, just an all rounder. And he went on obviously to have a great career, still having a great career. And he sure got called up with the Republic Armed as well at one point.
Did that, definitely.
So yeah,
brilliant. We'll finish up who's the last striker who partners Adam Rooney up front.
So I've already mentioned him so far a couple of times actually, more so as my manager, but actually he was one of the best players that I ended up playing with. It's Craig Brewster. So I knew Craig from when I was at Hibs. So I was a young boy at Hibs at 17, and he was playing for Hibs, having signed from Ionikis, I think it was, in Greece. So he did something similar. He went abroad quite late in his career, and then he came back to Scotland, I think, a better player. And I think the players around about him used to get the benefit, he developed, I'm sure, like Gary O'Connor at Hibs, maybe Tam McManus possibly played with him. And then when he was at Dunfermline, like Stevie Crawford, they all mention Craig in their development. So it shows it's testament to Craig and how he was as a player. And he would speak to all the boys round about him, and make sure he was giving advice. He was one of these players that no matter where you win the ball back on the park, we played 4-5-1 quite a lot with Inverness. And we would just find him with a pass, and it might not be the best pass in the world, but he would bring it under control and bring players into it. From there, we'd have good runners coming off him, Ian Black and Don Cowie, John Rankin. So that was it. That was his game. Hold the ball and wait for people to come and support him, and then get in the box, and he would score goals as well. He scored some really important goals for Inverness as well in his time.
Definitely, brilliant team. And just as well, you mentioned a few players that kind of just missed out. Is there any players you just want to give a wee mention to that just missed out in the team?
So strikers wise, probably at Dundee United played with a couple of good ones. Lee Miller, Noel Hunt. Midfield, I was actually thinking of putting Scott Brown in, just because I'd played so many games with him at youth level and then reserves. But I thought I'd better not, because he's obviously went on to play first team at Hibs and then on to Celtic, and I ended up going in a different direction to Inverness. So I didn't want to put him in, but we played together for quite a wee while in the youth team up front, and both of us were strikers, and we just used to run about. I used to do most of his running, and he would get all the glory. Bobby Williamson kind of saw him and thought, right, he'll do for me. put him in the first team squad, and obviously the rest is history. But the amount of players coming through that team at the time with Stephen Whittaker, Kevin Thompson, there's so many. Gary O'Connor or Riordan were both a wee bit older, but still that whole era was some golden era for Hibs, really.
Definitely. Just as well, you finished your playing career at East Kilbride. Just what was that experience like towards the end of your career?
So I was happy that I was being given the opportunity to go and play with my hometown team. Really, just growing up in East Kilbride, I always had an eye on their scores and thought it would be great, some story to be able to go down there with a few boys, maybe other boys that played at a higher level, like Sean Winter and Barry Russell, Craig Malcolm, and if we'd managed to kind of get them up to the higher level, then it would be something that I would look fondly on. But we just missed out. With Cowdenbeath, we lost in the playoffs with a penalty. We get beat in the other playoffs from Cove quite convincingly, right enough, and Cove obviously went on to do really, really well. So hopefully, the club haven't missed the boat, because it's getting tougher and tougher every year. The likes of Kelty Hearts and Bonnie Rig Rose, East Stirling's still there abouts, BSC Glasgow. So hopefully the club can do it at some point. But no, for me, it was really, really enjoyable. 5 minutes away from me at K Park and Calder Glen at East Kilbride. So it suited me. I had a young family and really enjoyed my 3-4 years there.
Yeah, definitely. What's your plans for the future? Have you thought about maybe getting into kind of management and things like that? Is that kind of cross your mind?
Yeah, I've done my A licence, so it's definitely something in the back of my mind. I did a wee bit of coaching at East Kilbride towards the end and ended up taking them interim when Jim Patterson had left and Stuart Malcolm had left earlier in the season. So, no, I enjoyed that wee spell, but obviously COVID had kind of called a halt to the season, so I didn't really get a good run at it. We had about 4 games. But I really enjoyed that wee spell, so it kind of gave me the wee taste for it. So if something come up in the future, then it'd definitely be something that I'd be interested in getting in again, because it's torture working 9 to 5 Monday to Friday without something at the weekend. Is that release, having done it for so long in my whole life. So, yeah,
definitely. It's been an absolute pleasure to be on, David. I really can't thank you enough for joining. A brilliant team as well. Just thanks very much for joining me.
No, not my pleasure, Scott. Anytime.
Pleasure. Thanks very much. Thanks
Cheers.
very much,
Bye-bye.
mate. Cheers.